And it's my great pleasure to now invite Mike Woodbury to the stage to formally wrap up the day. A couple of quick messages as Mike makes his way up. Please be back here from 6:30 p.m. for pre-dinner drinks. The awards will start at 7:15 p.m. Your hosts will be the inimitable Yvonne Davey and the irrepressible David Boyle. I'd like to thank David Ireland for emceeing with absolute aplomb today. Ka kite anō.
Thanks, Vanya, and it's great to see that a 3-year hiatus hasn't blunted the edge of your MC skills. Fantastic. Mā te wā, and over to you, Mike.
Kia ora anō tātou, no mai e tine, e te rau. Ko Mike Woodbury toko ingoa. He hoa rangapū ahu ki Chapman Trip, ki te whanganui ātara nei, e mihi kau atu ana kia tātou katoa. To all our guests and participants today, it falls to me to briefly thank you all on behalf of the conference organisers and the sponsors. And I'm going to be upbeat, because I am, and not just because I suffer from resting happy face. I arrived here today jaded, to be honest, tired, as a legal advisor, just feeling somewhat chewed up and spat out by the law reform meat grinder. I end today re-enthused and re-energised and raring to keep going. Sometimes this conference wrap can be hard because it's hard to come up with a through line or a consistent running theme. Today, though, that theme was strikingly clear and consistent. It's optimism. Optimism for New Zealand, for our industry, and for all of our futures. At the mihi this morning, we heard of the winds of change. And from Richard Clippan, FSC CEO, we heard of ongoing change for the better, of growing New Zealanders' confidence and well-being, and of the mission we all have to keep up that momentum as part of the engine room of New Zealand's future, as a labour of love and a labour of purpose. Minister Robinson and Jack Tame spoke of a gloomy, uncertain world outlook, halved global growth forecasts, and spiralling inflation. But again, reason for optimism here in New Zealand, with the case for that optimism including having dealt with the pandemic better than most, now having open borders, manageable debt, strong levels of tourism and wider productivity, and inflation potentially now peaking. When we heard from Minister Shaw on all the government's initiatives in terms of sustainable finance and capital flows, and adherence to the 1.5 degree pathway and net zero by 2050, we heard real-life examples of how those initiatives are now helping drive a paradigm shift from rhetoric into action. And then, sitting in front of a literal 5-alarm fire on the big screen, which was quite disconcerting, we heard from a lively, engaging panel discussion on climate and sustainability, on our being at an inflection point now in terms of not just having a legal framework, but also an awakening of consumer expectations, a consciousness that these things are no longer merely an externality, and instead that they are a here and now set of risks and opportunities. The actions still lag somewhat, especially in terms of data collection, but the ambition is there and the work is underway. We are learning to make decisions that look beyond the short term and to anticipate the looming transition to decarbonisation and to lead and be more organised and excited in so doing, with a sense of obligation, bipartisan political support, and Te Ao Māori as ever showing the way. Samantha Barris of FMA assured us that regulation is not an end in itself. The FMA is all about the regulation driving the outcomes it articulates. And what an outcomes-focused approach means can be articulated in very simple terms. It's great to hear a renewed commitment to FMA working with providers in those efforts and to being engaged and open to discussion, and to have a CEO in the saddle who is so well equipped to help us learn from others' mistakes overseas, and who has a commitment to engagement which is guidance and support-led in the first instance. Then we had the really fascinating and mirthful panel discussion on navigating the many potholes in New Zealand's road to recovery before an altogether more soothing rural backdrop. My takeout, predictably I'm sure, is forward indicators are looking pretty good, though some hardships are inevitable, and Europe really does seem, well, screwed. There are some dark clouds on the horizon, but I'm pleased to report that I'm optimistic was uttered considerably more often than the U word. This afternoon I attended the wonderful workshop, Where Should Financial Capability Start? In the home, school or community? We were told about some fantastic iwi-led initiatives to educate youngsters about money so they in turn can educate their whānau, including their own parents, and about just how transformative that is. I also learnt that, contrary to myth, FinCap education is already widely in schools via Sorted in Schools, the free FinCap program, and that's now used by 68% of schools within the last 12 months. We heard about the Curve podcast initiative, a financial education program for women and essentially anyone else left out from the investment conversation, a place to go to break down the hard concepts and make finance less boring, indeed exciting and engaging. These and other Te Ara Ahunga Ora-led initiatives, including its fabulous de-jargoning glossary, are helping Kiwis become steadily more financially confident and capable. There's a long way to go though, and we can help by building up our own capability to engage with Te Ao Māori, Pacifica, and female perspectives in particular, and just join the dots. And lastly, coming back full circle to the legal world that I inhabit, the profound sense of optimism even infused this morning's Leading Lawyers Symposium as the speakers addressed the impacts of recent conduct and culture reviews. Their businesses are engaging with passion. They're getting in front of customers to prompt better product choices in need and place them right at the centre, monitoring data for signs of either vulnerability or harm, and initiating benefit passbacks and technology reforms which make it easier for people to self-serve. And with Kofi and FAP licensing, the big end of town is starting and gearing up early to get ahead of looming issues with dedicated project teams, some with fairly scary acronyms, and staying positive in the face of sheer legislative volume. Understanding that conduct and outcomes-focused regulation does have a bright side and brings opportunity. There is also an enthusiastic engagement with the climate-related disclosures and the requirements for those institutions covered, including ensuring accuracy, intelligibility, and consistent taxonomy. There's headwinds aplenty, of course, such as the IPSA review, the revised IFRS 17 solvency standard, and the resourcing challenges that each of those create. And bum notes, such as the value for money assessments, in one case necessitating 250 spreadsheets at, ironically, considerable extra cost. And resourcing, of course, human and systemic, is posing considerable ongoing challenges. However, there's a generalised acknowledgement that it's good to have such an engaged regulator and open communication lines to help with this transition, and value in the increasingly regular stakeholder meetings at the top of the cliff. There's a saying I like that optimism is essential to achievement and is also the foundation of courage and true progress, which is another way of saying it tends to be self-fulfilling. So thank you all for bringing us your energy, your mana, and your optimism today. Thank you to our speakers for so generously sharing their insights. Have a wonderful awards evening, and we'll see you all here tomorrow. Mā te wā.